evening, everyone from Hong Kong. The weather, though, in Hong Kong today is very much like Singapore, so I feel at home without the chili crabs in Singapore. My presentation is titled Competencies and Learning Methodologies for the Future, and thank you for the organizers, not only for inviting me, but for allowing me to change the title. Because I can imagine many of us struggling to find Google and say, hey, what does VUCA mean, man? So thank you, and let's continue with my views. Okay, so our world has changed over the years since at least I came out to sea in 1974. And I don't mean that all the comedy shows in America are boring now without Donald Trump. I mean the maritime world. So that's what life was in 70s and 80s. That's the kind of engine rooms and ships that we could recognize in the 70s and 80s to the more modern ships in the bottom row. And what has also changed is the technologies that are used now to run ships. These are all screenshots from present day Anglo-Eastern Fleet. The second officer doesn't have to make a passage plan anymore because he gets an AI assisted software to send him the route, which he just has to accept after checking. The machinery data is all live in the screens of everyone in the office. The ports are deciding when the ship should arrive. The utmost dispatch, of course, still stays. And augmented reality cameras on board are becoming common. I think how we communicate has also changed. I think anybody who has 12-year-old children at home will understand when I say that if you want to get the attention of your 12-year-old at dinner table, you better text him, because otherwise he's not going to be talking to you. And I think it's an important one for all of us to know that by 2025, 75% of the workforce out at sea and in all industries are going to be millennials. Now, nothing against millennials, but they have some special qualities that we will talk about, which are due to the world that we all live in. So I think the competencies for the future need to change. So what are these qualities of the young people? They all love technology. They love video games. They use blogs and social media for their learning. They would rather believe a forward in WhatsApp than believe the textbook that they are reading. They would like to know why before we ask them to do something, and before they even want to know how to do something. One important part about them is they don't like to obey power. They like to work with individuals and teams. And this is shocking research, but the span of attention of all of us is reducing. It's down to 8.25 seconds according to one of the research that I've read about. And that's lower than the goldfish, which is pretty concerning for all of us. And one big quality of all of the young generation is trying to get instant feedback. They are used to the like sign, they want the haha sign, they want the emojis, and I can bet not many of us can understand the meanings of all the emojis that a 12-year-old today knows. So the competencies that are changing due to the change in the way ships are being run and managed are also important for all of us to plan for training for the future. So one of them would be the ability to recognize limitations and dangers of automation. Just because something is on the screen with 4 decimal places to it does not mean that it is accurate. The pointer on the dashboard of a screen could also not be showing you the right data from a machinery due to some software bug. The ability to process large amounts of data, that's the typical screen of a failure in the engine room today. You get lots and lots of quick lines coming in of data with red and green, and the analysis needs to be done on the basis of that, and no more engineers touching and feeling and hearing the sound of vibration of the pumps. So we need to be able to convert data into actionable items and have insights about them. They will also need to learn to focus on critical issues, because the amount of data that is available today on the bridge of a navigating bridge of any ship is hundreds of data points are available. I mean, you try to maneuver into the software of any ECDIS, and if you go to one ECDIS to another, and then you know that you can't find half the things because the menus are so different. They will need to learn also to work with remote teams, because a lot of decision making is going to be joint decision making. So if you have all the engine data coming into your office, obviously you're going to be discussing then with the chief engineer about what to do and what not to do. The change is amazing, the amount of change that is happening in digitalization world and in the greenhouse gas emission world. So all of the seafarers will need to be able to learn continuously. No more pass exam, okay, nothing to worry about for the next 10 years. That's not going to happen. Ability to cope with different changes that are happening, manage those changes, accept the changes. We all know that not everybody accepts every new innovation quickly. There are always people who like others to try out things first, buy the latest iPhone, let someone else do it, let the bugs get out, and then I'll buy it. Ability to cope with increased stress, because yes, it is happening that the stress is increasing on board. And the ability to communicate effectively, because a lot of stuff which with all these systems is going to be having teams working together, and which will mean that their ability to lead is going to be a lot more. So at least in my mind, there is no doubt that now we are at the time in the history of maritime evolution to redesign how we teach and what we teach. Some of the things that I think will be changing in the future will be virtual reality will get adopted more and more. These are programs from Anglo-Eastern. So we find this an extremely useful tool. For example, if you're teaching young cadets on what's the construction of a 4-peak tank, you just give him VR glasses and make him walk through the tank, which you could not do in the old days of a classroom. We had, Kemp and Young and Derrick's books with 2D sketches when we were learning 4-peak tanks. Gaming apps, this is going to be a big thing for those of you who are interested. Anglo-Eastern has put up a game called Vessel Inspector for free on the internet on both Google and iOS. Please play with it if you enjoy it. Micro-learning and videos, short-form videos, Netflix, Aflix, that kind of thing. And bite-sized learning. I think a lot of learning, because people are using WhatsApp and other social platforms to absorb knowledge, why not use the same kind of mediums to get to the young people and give them learning in bite sizes? Remember, the attention span is like goldfish. One area where I think there will be even more progress will be simulators, because this is something that is a very useful tool. And in COVID times, we've all tried out these cloud simulation stuff. It works, but there are limitations to it. I won't go into that. That needs a separate conference. But we do think that more and more simulators will get even better at simulating the reality from board. And right now, LNG simulators is something that is catching on. Instant feedback. What we think is going to happen more and more is that in order to keep the learners engaged, especially in online they need to be active learners. And in order to keep them engaged, this is a good tool, things like Mentimeter, etc. And these will help the teacher to understand quickly whether whatever he explained flew over the heads of the students or not. We've been doing this for about 10 years in our training center, and it really helps the teacher and the student. What is not going to go away, I think, in the future and should not go away is some form of hands-on training for certain skills. It's very different to be able to lift a piston in an animated program on a simulator and actually doing it with chain blocks. So some part will remain in hands-on training. And it's like the old saying, you don't throw away the baby with the wash water. So everything old doesn't have to be thrown away. And I know I'm getting to the end of my time. Mentoring, this is a skill that is dying out at sea because there is less time, rest hour regulations, faster turnaround, and platforms like these, which will allow people to get in touch with their mentors wherever they are in the world, is something that is coming in the future. we have found it to be useful. And soft skills will become even more critical: teamwork and communication. These are from the Intertango Behavioral Competency document with these domains, and there are 24 total, including subdomains. And I think training institutions will need to focus on this very much in the future. And the wonderful part is that there is so much more change coming in with all these things about alternate fuels, decarbonization, etc., that all of us will still be in such conferences discussing 5 years from now, what more should we do, what other technology should we use, how do we handle our world in the VUCA world. And I think it's all of us just need to decide, are we on board with change, or are we going to miss the boat in each of our businesses, whatever we do? Because as everyone knows, that autonomous ships are not coming in the next 5 years, but I'm sure they'll come in whatever, 20 years, 25 years. Some limited editions will come in short sea trade, etc. But in the meantime, we need to ensure that the seafarers remain competent for what they are doing. And for that, we will need to change what we teach and how we teach. That's it. Thank you very much.